So it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker in the IU Ukraine Non-Residential Scholars Program Research Seminars today. Our speaker is Dr. Mariya Rohozha, who has her habilitation and is a professor in the Department of Ethics, Aesthetics, and Culture Studies at the Taras Shevchenko National University of Kyiv. Her sphere of research interest covers philosophical, normative, and applied ethics, cultural studies, and cultural anthropology. And Dr. Rohozha also teaches ethics at the Department of Philosophy at the National University of Kyiv Mohyla Academy. And the topic of her talk today is comedic news of the Russian-Ukrainian war. So Dr. Rohozha, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to represent my research, or maybe first part of my research at this seminar. So, comedic news of Russian-Ukrainian war. First of all, I'd like to start with a brief outline of media landscape at the beginning of large-scale war. During this first period, I mean, maybe first half a year, the media landscape of Ukraine has changed radically. TV shows of private and state TV channels were replaced by state-sponsored Teleton. Teleton United News, Єдині новини, was launched on February 24th, 2022 to inform population of Ukraine in case of emergency, Russian full-scale invasion. It is worth it to mention that the first attempt to implement Teleton took place a week before, on February 16th. Do you see my next slide? Do you see the changing?
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Then expectations of invasion were in the air of Ukraine, and the president, trying to relieve tension, initiated the Day of Unity, День єднання, February 16. That day, all channels of Ukraine were engaged in United Teleton, You Are Together, Marathon єднання разом, to broadcast for informing audience about security situation and activities of authorities. Alexander Tkachenko, the Minister of Culture and Informational Policy of Ukraine, said that the day before February 16th, that tomorrow an interesting teleton will be in the morning, and in the evening all channels will broadcast the same picture. We'll see different speakers, representatives of public administration, opinion leaders, volunteers. They will speak on the topics of unity and the topics of narratives which can unite our country. Such attempt was so successful that it would put in motion in all around the clock regime since the February 24. Then private channels, 1+1, STB, ICTV, Inter, Ukraine, and public television channel Rada TV were united in United News to bring information about the war. Later on, the set of channels was changed. The channel Ukraine left the Teleton, but the general framework was still the same. Each channel has a slot lasting 5 or 6 hours. I have to mark that all Ukrainian channels beyond the pool of the Teleton were reduced to the level of regional TV or transformed their broadcast in social media, first of all in YouTube. For example, such rather popular channel is Pressa TV. In the first time of Ukraine, or in the first period of war, when Kyiv was bombing by artillery as well as suffered from missile attacks, broadcast was carried out from the bomb shelters. And I should mention here the phenomenon of censorship. I will pay more attention to it later in my presentation, but here I have to mention that authorities declared the absence of censorship on the Teleton of February 16. With the beginning of war, verified information was emphasized at the core of the United News by Teleton journalists and authorities. But in fact, censorship was frequently enforced. And objectively, it was just because it was justified, because information battleground became just as crucial as the physical front line. In the second phase of the large-scale war, the landscape of media space transformed, and the audience of the Teleton declined following the initial dangerous period due to imposed censorship and the lack of debate or alternative views. The public shifted their attention to social media channels, first of all, Telegram and Viber. And the first time in Ukraine's recent history, text-based news on Viber and Telegram channels supplanted visual content. Although unaccustomed to lengthy texts to read, the audience needed to know current events from alternative sources of information because of the suspicion in much emasculated information in the Teleton. According to the latest Kiev International Institute of Sociology survey, you see the decline, the increased that people who do not trust the Teleton increased up to the December of 23, and percentage of those who trust the Teleton decreased up the December 23. So here I'll stop my brief description of media landscape and will turn to memes and their place and role there. But my last words on media landscape and description will be as a spoiler for a starting point for my memes topic. Memes had appeared from the first day of full-scale invasion and still are still playing the crucial role I will talking about. But in the second phase of war, popularity of memes on media channels was some kind of substitute for the lost visual TV content shows, the visual content of TV shows. So, which disappeared after full-scale invasion from this, from the parameters of T2, da? And now I want to say some well-known statements about memes to be sure that we all are understanding the same basics. Da? The term was used by Richard Dawkins in his book, The Selfish Gene. The word meme traces back to the ancient Greek word mimema, imitating thing. And Dawkins tried to explain circulating cultural phenomena, cultural transmission and reduction. So he meant clothes, fashion, melodies, sketch phrases, but later on, the term was widely spread for marking digital-born media products. Media space is the meme environment where they are born and spread. And the term is used for designation of stable combinations of ideas, images or in visual or verbal form, which are quickly circulating in the internet for complex influence on the audience. Among the first were the memes or face memes that appeared in 2011. They were able to born associations and provoke the interest among the mass audience, which can identify hidden cultural connotations of memes and renew association links for the comic effect. Thus, such complicated work to explicate hidden cultural contents and renew associations for comic effect has to be done. Without such a work, many memes cannot be comprehended by the audience. Without understanding presupposed common language and cultural environment, as well as common language games of the audience, I invite non-special philosophical meaning. When aesthetic tasks are resolved, such as jokes, puns, different tropes, memes do not work in direct meaning. As for me, a good example in such a direct translation of the famous proverb «Козацькому роду нема переводу». It is almost impossible to make a direct translation, and literal translation, Cossack kinship does not disappear, can only outline the set of meanings of the proverb. And this machine translation is of something totally different from real understanding of this proverb. The same is with the memes. To understand memes is possible only in complicated intellectual activity within cultural context. And summing up some characteristics of meme: virality, so quick dissemination, replication, the ability to be reproduced and multiplied like a gene, emotionality, the ability to share emotions and appeal to emotions, not to not to reason, seriality, the ability to generate series, lines of similar units which are united by common theme and idea and are similar in design. The next characteristics is mimicry, the ability to imitate various genres, such as caricature, poster, or postcard, minimalism in form, polymodality. So the polymodality is the ability to transmit the information through different channels, as text as well as images. Topicality, the memes are connected with a definite social and cultural context, and without them, they're impossible to understand. Humor, medianess, I mean here media, and that they are digital born, and they reflect specifics of media landscape. And fantasy, the ability to model, to simulate impossible situations with the help of Photoshop, for example. A good example to illustrate specifics of memes in these characteristics is a series of memes based on the viral video from a Russian woman tourist leaving Crimea after explosions in Novofedorivka, near Saki, September 22. The woman in the video, in this viral video, is sobbing in the back seat of the car and says that she does not want to leave Crimea. I don't want to leave Crimea, Alushta at all. It's so cool here, and it is like being at home. And in Ukraine, this video was comprehended as the evidence that Russians experience horrors of wartime we are living in. And the image of a woman provoked quick dissemination, replications, emotional mood, seriality, mimicry, polymodality on topical event with the humor and fantasy in media space. But it is impossible to comprehend humor of a series without knowing the basic event, the explosion of Novofedorivka. Moreover, replications of memes of a series are based on new episodes of Russian-Ukrainian war. And to understand a series is possible only knowing about Ukrainian drones on Moscow and Belgorod. No, today it is about missiles attacks on Belgorod, but more than a year ago, when a series was popular, there were only drones. Knowing who was Ilya Prigozhin, the chief of the private military company Wagner, and be familiar with the regular speeches his speeches addressed to chief of the general staff of Russian army forces Valery Gerasimov, as well as unsuccessful launch of Russian satellite on the moon in August 23, and a number of other events that were depicted in memes. We see that war news become memes getting comic flavor. But what is important, often we see memes in media channels and later on read news. Some memes precede news and become comedic news of Russian-Ukrainian war. And it can be particular interesting twist in the theme of memes of war, that it is is in the focus of attention of Eric Baki and Betsy Grit from the Indiana University, that viewers remember better images than verbal news. The audience fixed in memory better memes than verbal news. It can be explained by biological basis of visual processing. In the process of evolution, the first skills was watching, and the skills of thinking and reading were developed much more later. Originally, memes were primarily used for entertainment, but the war has demonstrated their mobilizing and therapeutic functions. And what is interesting, mobilizing function was the first in time. So we can say that when safety as the basic good is violated, memes play mobilizing and therapeutic functions. Later on, I'll show that love provides social mobilization, consolidation, and involvement, while mobilizing emotional cohesion becomes cultural good. All we know, as example for this, my statement, all we know a famous phrase about Russian worship that was pronounced by the Ukrainian border guard from Snake Island, Roman Gribov, when border guards were offered from Russian worship to surrender. Here we see the first memes on this topic. Later on, Ukrainian post office would produce a stamp on this motive, especially there is a pun. The offer to surrender was from the Russian flagship missile cruiser Moskva, which in April 2022 was sunk by Ukrainian anti-ship missile. And variety of memes on the slogan Russian worship was really the great. But also there was a splash of daily use of abusive language at all. You see the memes that reflect such public state of affairs, but real life phrasing was the first. At the top center, you see the photo of a village bus station with the real abusive inscription, with the demand "Get out from of our village and Ukraine," and the signature of old woman Nadia, da Baba Nadia. In the first weeks of full-scale invasion, the massive of the abusive language was really great. Even state-controlled media and respectable private media actively used Billingsgate. Abusive language inscriptions in public places, even in road signs, the meme in the top left corner reflects such a real-life tendency. And thus, the use of abusive language during wartime acts to fortify resistance against invaders. It's a mixture of mockery and life affirmation. And here we have to recall Mikhail Bakhtin and his book Rebellize and His World. Translated into English and published in Bloomington in 1984. There, Bakhtin mentioned abusive language as a part of Billingsgate belongs to carnivalesque ambivalence. In prehistoric society, abusive language was the language of magic and incantations, but at carnivalesque world, it was transformed and lost its magical and practical character and possessed integral and universal role. In carnivalesque, the old world gives the birth to the new one. And these abuses are ambivalent. While humiliating and mortifying, they at the same time revive and renew. And first weeks of full-scale invasion produced giant transformations in different spheres of public and private life of Ukrainians. And we all experience some elements of unreal. Carnival communication with the help of abusive language helped to keep psychological balance. And Ukrainian researcher from Kiev Могила Academy, Irina Bondarevska, I will come back to her research later on too. She considers that abusive language creates atmosphere of intimacy in a community using it. So there is a therapeutic function of abusive language too. On the other hand, historically, many societies forbade the use of abusive language in everyday situations, as they believed it could adversely impact a person's fate. There are two types of swearing, namely light and aggressive. Both can be found in war, but aggressive swearing tends to be more effective. It fuels anger in both the speaker and the opponent while simultaneously providing relief to the speaker. However, regardless of the type, swearing often produces the opposite of the desired outcome. And I have to mention that ethicists that the using of abusive language, in fact, represents the decline of moral standards within the public sphere, broadening what's considered acceptable, the Overton window. Once this has happened, it's incredibly challenging to revert to a pre-swearing state. This recalls a famous quote from Winston Churchill when he suggested the cutting the funding for arts. His question was, then what would we be fighting for? And this can be reinterpreted to ask, if we consciously degrade the quality of public discourse, what principles then guide us toward victory? The most evident therapeutic function of laughter as a part of carnival became at the second stage of war, when Ukrainians had understood that the war would be longer than 2 or 3 weeks and more complicated than the battle directly at the front line. And many memes had appeared. But to understand them is not enough to translate them into the language you understand. You have to know cultural context. For instance, images from the popular Soviet movies all adult population is acquainted with are used rather often. As the Soviet sequel of Mikhail Bulgakov play, Ivan Vasilievich Changes the Profession, where the Dr. Spock exaggerated the damage in the top right corner. Besides cultural context, you should know topical news from the first weeks of war. For example, the governor of the Kherson region, Kim, shared live affirmative photos and videos from his office, and in comparison, the warriors of Western world leaders such as Emmanuel Macron. A huge number of memes with a therapeutic effect were and are about domestic affairs. A year ago, after Russian missile attacks on energy infrastructure, problems with electricity became permanent. Local authorities had to organize timetable for power outage in autumn, and winter, people lived without electricity 3, 5, 7 hours. Many memes reflected these problems. For example, in our mind, timetable for our house is worse than in the house near us, and we see that the electricity is switched on for it early as at the top center. That's a meme. Or at top right corner, the memes depicts the women who live in multi-story buildings and have to go upstairs with children, their carriages and the back and market bags and so on. These examples are additional evidence to the thesis I said earlier. To understand the meme, you should be dived in circumstances, knowing news and having appropriate background culture. Background culture is the term of famous American philosopher John Rawls, who tried to distinct political culture, and background culture is distinct from political culture, is the culture of civil society that includes citizens, their associations, worldviews, discursive forums, and In other words, citizens share common cultural and historical experience, events, and use. Also, memes can be targeted to either civilians or military. Military, each carrying a distinct purpose. Those directed towards the military are often created by servicemen for internal use, highlighting scenarios that might not be fully understandable for civilians. One more consideration concerning Ukrainian memes for domestic audience should be made here. Irina Bondareska, I have mentioned earlier, in her research traces traditions of Ukrainian laugh culture back to Ivan Kotlяревsky burlesque poem Aida. She mentions tendency, I'll come back later, but here it is worthy to outline. From Kotlяревsky, Ukrainians are inclined toward blurring moral coordinate system. Kotlяревsky invited to laugh within the world of Aida on the affairs we would be shocked in real life. Applying this statement to the memes, we can recall a famous series of Sergei Pritula, a famous Ukrainian showman and volunteer who called Ukrainians in autumn 22 to donate money on nuclear weapons, as Ukrainians usually donate money on drones or equipment for soldiers. We see down left, this is a picture of a line at a cash register with the title fundraising for nuclear weapon. We see other approach to Ukrainian war memes for foreign audience, usually using English language. The memes aim to highlight the resilience of Ukrainians, question of efficiency of international bodies like United Nations, and integrate continued support from allies to emphasize our steadfastness and our weakness of our enemies. Memes served a consolidating and motivating role, aiming to occupy the informational space to the point where it becomes inaccessible to enemies, thereby blocking their narratives. Ukrainian memes are in this respect. When compared to Russian memes, Ukrainian come out on the top in terms of precision, wit, and humor. However, it's crucial not only to safeguard our informational space, but also to infiltrate a portion of the information field of the enemy. Ridiculing enemy, Ukrainians set a positive experience of interacting with the stranger, scaling the image. But the question of measure mean has to be put here. Aristotle differentiates between laugh and mockery, marking the latter as a vice. This brings us to the concept of mean. According to Aristotle, virtue holds a balance between two parallel extremes. So how can we identify the point at which ridicule becomes excessive? Also, should there be any restrictions in certain life and defeating the enemy during war? I mean, a topic of enemy's death in memes. First of all, take, for instance, a popular series of shark-themed memes that went viral in Ukraine during last summer. These memes humorously revolved around the shark attack on Russian tourists. In Vladimir Prop's book Ritual Laughter in Folklore, he positions laughter as a symbol of triumph over death. The defeat and death of the enemy represents the victor's survival and success, and more notably, model the prevailing spirit of life. This concept can provide therapeutic relief from traumatic experiences in present moment, maintaining a beacon of hope during times of despair and failure. It might be thought that this concept encompasses the well-known series of dead Russians meme depicted in body black bags. On January the 1st, 2023, a false claim originating from Russian websites circulated in social media. They reported that Ukrainians had displayed a portrait made of deceased Russian soldiers on the battlefield to celebrate Stepan Bandera's birthday. This misinformation sparked a wave of dark humor among Ukrainians. Utilizing specific software, they generated pictorial expressions and phrases. This case essentially boils down to two main viewpoints. On the one hand, in times of war, any measures that boost national morale could be considered acceptable. On the other hand, the cultural tradition is not disrespecting fallen enemy's body publicly prevails. This view is seen in even echoed in Homer's Iliad, where respect for an enemy's body is both discussed and confirmed within the narrative. Achilles smoking Hector's corpse is a very famous plot. This represents the cultural trend in Western civilization where body black bags memes are seen as ethically questionable. Our disregard for morally inappropriate behavior aligns with the life carnivalization, an idea referred to by Umberto Eco as the carnivalization of morals. This concept blurs the line between reality and entertainment. And conversely, we don't observe any public disrespecting the body of fallen enemy. Here, the hypothetical body of the enemy is obscured by a black bag. In other words, while the bag exists, the body does not, especially given that all bags are generated by a specific computer program. Moreover, coming back to Irina Bondarevska's concept of carnivalesque world of Aeneida, she considers that the moral opposition of good and evil is taken beyond the measures of reality. Aesthetic pleasure is more important than moral and social arrangement. Aesthetic, non-utilitarian. Bondarevskaya takes in mind Kotlяревsky's text in Aeneida, but its traditions in Ukrainian love culture is difficult to overestimate. And such consideration is rather relevant to judgments of body bags memes. In general, such black bags as a text font is an impressive and successful experience. But because of much ambivalent emotions and cannot be a universal one. So some kind of positive alternative to the text font might be a good experience. And from our side, we'd like to contribute to this deal. At one of our previous meetings, collaboration between Indiana University cohorts was encouraged. And Russell Valentina told about opportunities for collaboration with a cohort of artists. Maybe it would be possible to produce together some kind of military cats meme generator and templates for its work as a life-affirming and positively directed products. And we can offer this as a template for creating memes to our students and wider audience, and summarizing this educational experience in the productions of fonts, memes, and audiences will be an important learning experience for our textbook on Comedic news of Russian-Ukrainian war. Many continue my speech. I'd like to mention that many Ukrainians view this war as an anti-colonial conflict, and memes are serving a crucial role here. They reflect the struggle against Russian aggression as well as the history of relations between Ukrainians and Russians, also in a manner that was mentioned by Bondarevskaya in her research, blurring reality and creating fiction beyond the opposition of good and evil. Also, while talking about memes, we have to mention the linguistic decolonization in memes. There are different, not levels, but different positions of this linguistic decolonization we see. First of all, memes deal with specifics of Ukrainian pronunciation. So Polynesia loaf is a good example of difficulties to vowel sounds. The second, differences in vowel sounds паляниця love, да, and полуниця strawberry, demonstrates the difficulties for non-Ukrainians to recognize them. At the third, we see mistakes in homonymous machine translation, the famous bavovna, the хлопок as a clap, and хлопок cotton, and also machine translation. And the fourth, we can see using, it's very important, we can see using of Ukrainian alphabet letters for writing of Russian words with imitating Russian pronunciation. The language of enemy, the colonizer language, is not employed. Instead, the transliteration underscores a dismissive attitude towards this language and the enemy, the colonizer. So while researching memes, it is important to fix what news are transformed into memes and what are not. As a part of human culture, memes embody key mass media trends, including simplification, physical comedy such as false and confuses, and straightforward puns. Thus, mistakes of Russian army at the beginning of war were the inexhaustible resource for Ukrainian memes. Bad equipment of Russian soldiers, outdated weapons of Russians, low motivation of their soldiers in military campaign, mistakes of Russian civil and military authorities in estimation of Ukrainian military equipment and material of civil society and its potential, and so on. And it should be mentioned that today servicemen worry about such diminishing of the image of the enemy because Ukrainians do not consider the situation on the front line as a serious one, considering Russian army as it is depicted in Ukrainian memes. So neither tragical events nor mistakes of Ukrainian army are in Ukrainian memes. The same situation is with the civil life problems. Blackouts are the plot for a lot of memes. But missile attacks are represented in memes in a very specific modification. For example, as a lady's quest for nice underwear. Because something awful as the missile attacks on cities are, cannot be the matter of memes. Only temperate fears can be fixed there. And also, I want to read a quote from the words of a blogger, art critic Lena Polyakova, who mentioned in her blog, I wanted to post a picture of a tired woman with the caption, when the air alert woke me at night. But as it turned out, the original title of the picture was Woman on the Deathbed. When I found out about it, of course, I replaced it with another illustration because it is inappropriate and not funny. Besides such topics, memes avoid socially explosive ones, too much ambiguous or unpopular, such as mobilization or military recruitment, inflation, reduction in social benefits, and so on. To some extent, it is about censorship and self-censorship. In situations where information was occurs, freedom of speech control is unavoidable. Often this takes the form of state-implemented censorship, which serves as an external top-down from power. However, we should also consider community self-censorship as a different form of control arising from a culture of vigilance. Culture of vigilance is the mode of responsibility in circumstances of wartime, responsibility in the mode of vigilance as the individual attentiveness to the goals set by others, goals set by state. Vigilance as exercised by citizens for a purposes that go beyond the individual goals. For example, the goal of state during the war security resonates with citizens who monitor and watch over the information hygiene of society. A special form of vigilance is introspection and self-externalization, where authorities cannot control over information hygiene, for example, in social media. Citizens become vigilant and self-censorship. For domestic audience, the key goal of vigilant meme management is to therapy the fear of death and enhance the therapeutic outcomes. For foreign audience, it entails intimidating enemies and controlling potentially sensitive information. Maybe I will stop here. Thank you for your attention, and I would be glad to answer your questions or to listen to your comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mariya, for a really rich and provocative presentation. Such wonderful examples. I'm sure we have commentary, questions, and comments. Yes, Petro Kuzik, please.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Mariya, for such a really fascinating presentation. It's, always reminds me this saying that there is some joke in every joke, right? So it's like while you first laugh, then you think that the matter that we are laughing at or from is not really funny. But anyway, my question is quite simple, actually. Do you know if these memes from the social media, from the internet, are collected by some institutions? Are they recorded? Because, many of them would be lost otherwise. Because, the war drags on, and there are so many of them, and some of them are really good, and I don't personally take care of recording many of them, but it would be nice to go back and probably after a while and see them and maybe use them for my own work as well. So thanks.
Thank you for your question. It's maybe to answer, the answer consists of two parts. First of all, as I tried to demonstrate that memes as digital born, they are topical here and now. And many pictures I have collected for this almost 2 years, no, a year, definitely a year. They are, out of date today, because and that's why I explained historical context, maybe news context for these memes, because they are topical today when they are produced and shared as viruses in media space, and when they are living, they lose their topicality. But this activity to gather and to collect memes is produced. There is a very, not famous, but it's a rather mighty project saving Ukrainian cultural heritage online. It's an interdisciplinary first of all, American project, and many people at the volunteers grounds are working for saving this heritage. And one of the initiatives within this project, Sucha project, is connected definitely with memes. And the team of librarians from Harvard University, Anna Rakityanskaya and Olga, Alexic, they gather them at the platform of Sucha collection, and they also supply the metadata and some kind of explanations. What are they about? What are they dedicated to? And what do we know to understand? Or even in brief, do not know in this cultural context in detail. So these practice is they are collecting.
Thank you, Mariya. Do you know, are those archived on a public website? I mean, are that searchable and all of that?
Sucha saving Ukrainian cultural heritage online. Sucha collection, and it's possible to find what's Sucha collection and the collection of memes. And really, there are also Telegram channels dedicated to memes topics. So memes are produced on every day events of Russian-Ukrainian war.
Thank you. Thank you. Elizaveta has put the link for Sucho in the chat. Thank you so much, Elizaveta. It's www.sucho.org/memes, MEMES. Perfect. Other questions, commentary? Dr. Rohozha?
Nadia Гончаренко, да?
Oh, I don't see. Oh, yes.
Да, Nadia Гончаренко.
Nadia, please, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. I just want to comment that I like these memes. I like when I sit in my corridor during the night shelling or explosions, I like just to scroll down these memes, especially Baba Kid. I like this brave kid who is beat everyone. So I think this dark humor is very helpful for us during this time. So thank you.
No, I'd like to comment also that what I have mentioned the words of Irina Bondaryevskaya that who traces back traditions of Ukrainian love culture up to Kotlяревsky and his the world of love, his Aeneida, but it's very difficult to love in circumstances of war. So living in these circumstances and love is the only, sometimes the only variant to keep psychological balance. But when you share your love with those who are with you, sorry, it's simply to understand. But those who are out of this context of living in the wartime, in war circumstances, it's simply theoretical, sometimes theoretical, sometimes strange.
Nicola, you had a question or comment?
It's actually, it's not really a question, it's my consideration about fascinating presentation. The background of that images drew my attention, and I thought about background. As you said, some backgrounds of these images refer to Soviet cultural context. Some images refer to Hollywood production. I think it's one of the way of analysis of these images of that memes especially in the case of post-colonial studies, for instance. For me, it's quite interesting to conduct even quantitative analysis, how many images refer to a Soviet cultural or Russian context, how many to American Hollywood production, how many to, I don't know, fairy tales or some some products, I mean, Coca-Cola or something else. I think it's interesting for analysis, for further exploration, investigation. And question is, what do you think about variety of these contexts? How many varieties of contexts of backgrounds could you define?
No, you see,
One of these is so,
at,
but
so at my educational background, I'm a philosopher, not a sociologist. And sociological methods we sometimes use now and analyzing empirical experience, empirical data of Russian-Ukrainian war, but not in such details. We did not calculate the number of plots, the number of directions, or the sources for inspiration for memes, because it is impossible to unite them. They are as grassroots, as rhizoma. They are they appear in different places, in different media channels. Some in Telegram, some on Viber, some in Facebook, and I'm not talking about Instagram because I'm not there. I don't want to be there too. So, and these sources are different, and their life, the environment is digital but different, and they are not centralized. And it is very difficult even to understand the measures in real time. When the war will be finished, and we will want to research these memes from the distance. Then we can calculate this empirical statistics, but today it is impossible. Why Soviet movies? Because all adult population more or less is acquainted with these movies, and many, not, it's not a 10%, maybe less than 10%, but they are. The same cartoons also from Soviet cartoons, and sometimes Western movies, but not so usual as a Soviet one, because maybe Soviet reflect our post-Soviet reality. I don't know. It's really for it's a topic for further researches, I think. But it will be possible when this process of meme creating would be stopped. So it's also very interesting, because my colleague and I, we wrote an article about the Viber channel of Mariupol, of the period of siege. And today we can research it, because this channel did not disappear more, and the process of siege is over, and we can deal with this empirical data from this historical point of view as historical events. Today with memes we can't do this, because every day produces new news, and memes react on this news in a comedic way, and different plots, different sources of inspiration are used to be smart, to be wit, to be clear for everyone in this definite moment of time.
Thank you, Mariya. I'll quickly read a question from Olena Pavlova that's in the chat, and then I see Elizaveta's hand is up. Olena asks, how does a culture of vigilance differ from self-censorship in the functioning of memes? So a culture of vigilance versus self-censorship.
No, as self-censorship is as our private private censorship on the viewing of events and the judgment, and the culture of vigilance is more publicly shared. It's more social phenomenon when these socially meaningful matters are in attention of different many people with their personal self-censorships, ideas and understandings. So it's vigilance, the culture of vigilance is a social phenomenon spread all over the society, or those who are actively engaged in observing of social life, and especially in media space.
Thank you. Elizaveta, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mariya, for the presentation. As always, it was very, very interesting to listen to. My question was about kind of commodification of memes, how modern the kind of the process that I've seen is that memes no longer exist just in the kind of media space, but they have shifted into like physical objects. So people want to buy things with memes on them. For example, the Russian warship meme is everywhere, as you showed as well. So what do you think about this change of medium, and how does it reflect on memes?
So every day, or maybe every time, we deal with some configuration of historical events that are not historical events, but news we are living in now, or we are living with. And reacting on these news, reactions can be different. And today they are topical, we remember them. And as I mentioned Betsy Grape, who said that visual content is more bright than verbal because of evolutional specifics, but we remember bright memes better than bright news. But as the news yesterday news, the same is with memes. They lose their topicality, and only several bright images or only several bright memes can survive and continue be topical for some period of time, relevant when they are relevant to the situation we are living in. And as said my foreign colleague, only Ukrainian can laugh on their situation if they are laughing, if they want to laugh on this. And we laugh, but we laugh only in the measure these memes are topical for further situations and further events.
There's a good follow-up question in the chat. I think that's related from Oleksiy Oleksiuk. He says, do we have any approach to assessing the influence of memes, rating them based on their lifetime or frequency of elements and patterns, similar to what Mykola Homeniuk was stating? Perhaps they are just a blink in media flows. Do you know such research?
No, you know that there are not many researches on memes, and published researchers are also very random events in humanities today. As I've mentioned today, Anna Rakitianskaya and she and her colleagues published a series of articles on memes collection of Russian-Ukrainian war, but they try to they try to highlight their librarian and archival matters, not not much on social and anthropological considerations, as well as what Elizaveta Volkovska also has a thesis on memes, but these are very random researches, and they only, we can say that only start especially on memes of war, of Russian-Ukrainian war, and maybe it's a task for future considerations and research.
Mikola? We can't hear you.
Just for advertising, I know one of such research. It's mine research with Janusz Panchenko, entitled "From Pilfered Nail to Stolen Tank." This research about how meme about for perception of whole Roma minority in Ukraine and also abroad.
Maybe you
I
will
recommend you.
give a link in Telegram or here to read your research.
Yes, thank you, Mikola. Your connection was breaking up, so we couldn't hear the name of your article. So if you have a link, please put it in the chat and we can all look at your article. Thank you so much. Elizaveta, you were mentioned in your thesis. Would you care to tell us about what you're working on?
Yeah, of course. Right now, I wrote my thesis on Russian-Ukrainian memes and more like oppositional memes as well. And Mariya and I had a very interesting conversation about why Russian state memes don't necessarily work the same way. Kind of, my opinion is that they're kind of imposed from above. They're not kind of bottom-up type of memes. For example, the Ukrainian government does a very good job at kind of using what's already there, something that people already know, for example, the Russian warship meme, or just, like a bunch of memes like that, versus, the Russian government, who's a very authoritarian, and like they said, this is, so for me, like this kind of contradicts the nature of a meme as well. So yeah, it's a very interesting field. I'm looking forward to look more into that. In general, I look into kind of resistance and oppositional movements online. So yeah, thank you very much, Mariya, for mentioning my thesis.
Thank you. Mariya, any concluding thoughts, provocations for us to take with us?
Thank you very much for your attention, for your comments, and for your referring to new sources of information. Thank you very much for the opportunity to represent my research here. Thank you, Sarah.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing it. Thank you for sharing it with us. It's really fascinating. So with that, we'll say do побачення and see you all next month. And don't forget that we do have the call for proposals out for the March 21st through 23rd Indiana University Taras Shevchenko Ukrainian Studies Conference. So we look forward to your panel proposals, and please let us know what questions you have. And thanks to all of our guests who joined us today, and looking forward to seeing you all. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.
Героям слава.
Thank you.
Героям
Bye.
слава. До побачення.
До побачення.
До побачення.
До побачення.